When you're adding two fractions and each one of those fractions has a different denominator, for example here a over b plus c over d, b and d are the denominators and they are different. The only thing you have to do to perform this operation is just to memorize that a over d plus c over d equals ad plus bc divided by bd. Sounds a little bit too confusing, right? Well, I'm gonna show you a method that you can memorize this almost instantly, and it's also very easy to perform the operation of adding two fractions with different denominators. Remember, to add two fractions with different denominators, this is the formula that you have to use always. How can you memorize this very rapidly, very easily? Let me show you. You use what I call the method of the x underline, the underline x method. Let me show it to you step by step. Step 1. The first stroke of the x. When you're writing an x with an underline, you go like this: first stroke, second stroke, and underline. So in the first stroke, you go through the a, which is the numerator of the first fraction, and you go through d, which is the denominator of the second fraction. That goes on the other side of the equation in the numerator. So you have a times d. To that, I have to add the second step. And the second step is the second stroke of the x, going up. In that way, I go through the b, which is the denominator of the first fraction, and c, which is the numerator of the second fraction. And that also goes in the numerator of the other side of the equation. So now I have a times d from the first step plus b times c from the second step. The third step in the x underline method is the line that underlines that x, and it's just the multiplication of both denominators. Now we have a times d plus b c from the first two steps, and all of that divided by b times d, which is the multiplication of the denominators of both fractions. So it's basically as easy as 1, 2, 3. 1 ad, 2 plus bc, and 3 divided by bd. Let's do an example with numbers so we can see if this works or not. So we're gonna substitute values in the formula. A will be equal to 2, b will be equal to 4, c will be equal to 6, and d is 8. So a over b becomes 2 over 4, and c over d becomes 6 over 8. So the first step, I'm adding 2 over 4 plus 6 over 8. I do the first stroke of the x, going from left to right, from up to down, and I go through number 2 and number 8. So the first term that I put on the other side of the equation on the numerator is 2 times 8. The second step, we're going up, so we go through the 4 and through the 6. So the second term in the numerator on the other side of the equation is 4 times 6. The third step is just the multiplication of the denominators, the underline, and that is 4 times 8. Now let's verify if what we have here on one side of the equation equals what we have on the other side of the equation. So first I'm going to multiply what we have on the right side of the equation, what we just performed using the x underline method. 2 times 8 becomes 16. 4 times 6 is 24, and 4 times 8 is 32. The other side I'm not changing yet. It's staying the same, 2 over 4 plus 6 over 8. Now 16 plus 24 becomes 40. So now I have 2 over 4 plus 6 over 8 equals 40 divided by 32. Now I have to simplify 40 divided by 32, and that becomes 5 over 4. How did I get from 40 over 32 to 5 over 4? Well, what I did is I simplified by dividing both the numerator and the denominator by 8. So 40 divided by 8 equals 5, and 32 divided by 8 equals 4. Since I divided by the same number both on the numerator and the denominator, that is an equivalent fraction, and it is exactly the same value. 40 over 32 equals 5 over 4. So now what we have is that 2 divided by 4, or 2/4, plus 6 over 8 equals 5 over 4. And that I can also rewrite as 1 1/4. Now, if we want to know if two sides of the equation are the same, one way that we can verify is to change these numbers into decimals. 2 over 4, you could simplify it to 1 over 2. And what is the same thing, 1 over 2 equals 0.5, which is the same thing as 2 over 4, also equals 0.5. 6 over 8, you could simplify it to 3 over 4, or you could just divide 6 by 8 and you get 0.75. And 5 over 4, which is the same thing as 1 1/4, equals 1.25. If I add those two together, I get that one side is 1.25, and the other side is also 1.25. So the underlined x method works. You can do the multiplication following the instructions of the underlined x method, and you're going to get the same result on both sides of the equation. Now let's see how that works with food, using the example of pizza. Again, I am adding 2 over 4 and 6 over 8. 2 over 4, remember, the denominator tells me how the pizza was divided, and 2 tells me how many slices I have left. So 2 over 4 is telling me that the pizza was divided into 4 slices and I have 2 slices left. 6 over 8, I know that the pizza was originally made out of 8 slices and I have 6 slices left. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to fill this pizza with slices of this one here. Move slices from this one to this one until I get one complete pizza. In order to do that, I have to move 4 of these slices to the pizza that is empty. So I take 4 from this one and I put them here. So now in this pizza, I have 2 over 4, which was what I originally had, and to that I added 4 over 8. And those are the slices that I needed to fill this pizza completely. Now, since I took 4 slices away from this one, I am only left with 2 slices out of a possible 8. Now, following the rules of simplifications, I know that 2 over 4 can be simplified into 1 over 2, simply by dividing 2 into 2 and 4 also into 2. It becomes 1/2. And 4 over 8, I can divide both the numerator and the denominator by 4, and I get that that also equals 1/2. So the equivalency here is 1/2 plus 1/2 equals 2 over 4 plus 4 over 8. It is the exact same thing. And on the other side, I simplify 2 over 8, and I find that this equals 1/4. 2 over 2, 1, 8 over 2 is 4. So this is 1/4, and this is 1/2 plus 1/2, which is simply 1. So now I have rearranged my slices of pizza. I have simplified the amounts of the fractions that are remaining, and I find the same exact result. 2 over 4 plus 6 over 8 also equals 1 1/4. You can do it by the underlined x method. You can do it by the pizza method. You can use a calculator. Anyway, you're going to find the same result. 2 over 4 plus 6 over 8 equals 1 1/4, or 1.25. So let's recap. If you're adding two fractions and those two fractions have different denominators, you have to use this formula, and the best way to memorize this formula is to use the underlined x method. You do the strokes as if you were drawing an X with an underline. The first stroke goes through A and D. Those two numbers get multiplied in the numerator of the new fraction that you're creating on the other side of the equation, a times d. The second stroke goes to the right and up, goes through b and c. That is the second term of the numerator of the new fraction on the other side of the equation. So you have a numerator that equals a times d plus b times c. And the denominator of the new fraction is the underline in the underline x method, which goes through b and d, which is simply the multiplication of the denominators of the other two fractions that you have initially. Finally, what you come up with is the same formula that you needed in the beginning. It's very easy. You don't have to memorize it. You just do as if you were drawing an x underline, and you're gonna get the formula correct. Now, if you're subtracting, you do the exact same thing, but instead of having a plus sign, an addition sign, you have a negative or a minus sign, a subtraction sign. The formula becomes a times d minus bc divided by b times d. Thank you for watching all the way to the end. If you found this useful, please subscribe, tell a friend, and don't forget to check some of my other videos and the playlist. Once again, thank you, and see you on the next video.